CMC's on bye, ETN's on bye. A lot of these backfields are no longer touchable, but it will be funny seeing those McCaffrey and ETN owners come to the other side, actually struggle in submitting starting lineups for the first time this season. But nonetheless, tier one, we will have Eckler. Not much to discuss. Tough matchup against the Jets, but ultimately, I mean, you did just have a game where Saquon Barkley had legitimately everything here in their respective offense. They were able to run the ball. That may have been the only thing that they were able to do. Nonetheless, you don't love the matchup, but he's one of the very few running backs that we can confidently rely on. Now, going down to tier two, things will get ugly quickly, ladies and gentlemen. We will go DeAndre Swift at 2. I know it's crazy. You try to do these rankings. Let me know what you changed, because I'm looking at DeAndre Swift saying, okay, Las Vegas sportsbooks are currently giving the Philadelphia Eagles the third highest implied team total of any team this week. We know that Swift has a very safe workload on first and second downs. We know that he will also be involved as a receiver as well. He has been hyper efficient so far this season. So if you're going to give me a running back in an elite offense that has a red zone role, that has a receiving role, that, I mean, we're projecting out to be in a great spot this week, even if it's a tougher matchup. I don't know where else I can go, because, I mean, we'll go over to 3, right, with Alvin Kamara. And we could say here with Kamara, yeah, obviously, the receiving usage is off the charts. And those underdog drafts where we took Alvin Kamara so much early in the offseason, back in rounds 9 and 10, we are printing money, and it is a beautiful spot. But with Kamara, I want to be realistic. You do have Taysom Hill stealing 2 rushing touchdowns this past week. They still really aren't using him at the goal line. I understand, yes, he did have the receiving touchdown. That was from like 15 yards out. So you are going to get vultured if you are a Kamara owner. It is a good matchup going up against Chicago. Now, Jonathan Taylor will be our next RB. Jonathan Taylor, another running back that we have a ton of. And with Taylor, it is a beautiful spot going up against the Carolina Panthers, where the Colts are about 3-point favorites. They have an implied team total of almost 24 points. The only teams right now with a higher implied team total are the Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens, Eagles, and Dolphins. This is a beautiful matchup going up against Carolina. They should be able to effectively run the ball. But the reason I don't want to put Taylor at the top of this tier is because you still have Zach Moss getting involved. Now, Tony Pollard will be that next back. With Pollard, very tough matchup going up against Philly. I mean, we were very aggressive with Pollard this past week, just because if you were looking at the underlying numbers, the man was averaging 16 carries per game. He was averaging 5 receptions per game. Las Vegas sportsbooks were telling us the Dallas Cowboys offense were going to be a top 5 offense in the NFL last week. So it's like, oh, the volume, the offensive scoring, I guess that means a zillion points to CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, Pollard did not get a lot of it. It's a tougher matchup going up against Philly this week, which is why it's going to be ranked lower in our rankings. And right now, you do have him around 21.5, 22 points with the implied team total. Now, our next guy will be Saquon Barkley. With Barkley going up against the Raiders, we have a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what the quarterback play is going to look like. We don't know what the Raiders defense does on Monday night. Now, as of the time I'm recording this, you actually have the Raiders favored over the New York Giants here, which is a tough spot to be in. Clearly, Saquon Barkley is this entire offense, but ultimately, it doesn't matter if Saquon Barkley is an elite level running back. It doesn't matter if he is 100% of their offense. If it is the worst offense in the NFL, it's hard to go all in on Saquon Barkley. Now, a running back that will be falling down our community rankings over on flogfantasy.com is Bijan Robinson. Bijan gets the rushing touchdown this past week, gives you the RB1 performance. What's frustrating is he had 5 targets. So you want to sit here and go, okay, well, if he continues to see 4 or 5 targets every single week, if he gets the work in the red zone, Bijan Robinson can be a top 3 running back in fantasy. In reality, I mean, that's not the case right now. I am interested to see how far he falls down those community rankings. And of course, if you're not already checking out those community rankings, they're completely free. You can actually contribute to them yourselves over on flogfantasy.com. Like we said, completely free. Just go to the rankings page. You can see them there. Really would help you out with all your trades rest of season. And if you want to check out any of my rankings over there, or if you wanted to get yours truly to break down your team in a fantasy football podcast, code FLOCK is also going to get you 30% off any subscription. And with any annual package, you're actually going to get an exclusive Flock hat and or shirt, whatever you want. Just let me know. But going over to our next guy, we'll be looking at Breece Hall with all horrible offense, but ultimately it doesn't matter if he's a 3-down back, if he's getting the involvement as a receiver. Now, right now, you do have the Jets with an implied team total of 19 points against the Chargers, though. So Vegas is telling us it's going to be a horrible team. Now, going over to Josh Jacobs, I'm recording this right before Monday night. Now, of course, we're going to take into account what happens in this Monday night game, and I'll be giving y'all updates throughout the week and with that flex rankings video at the very end of the week. So just make sure to subscribe if you're not already. Then we're going to go Kenneth Walker at 10. I want to be more aggressive with Kenneth Walker here, but it's a very tough matchup going up against Baltimore where you're a 6-point dog, where you have an applied team total less than 19 points, where Zach Charbonnet played more snaps last week because Kenneth Walker's clearly not 100%. So I really like him. We drafted him everywhere because I was not an Aaron Jones fan in drafts this year, given Aaron Jones' age. And if you weren't drafting Aaron Jones, you were taking Kenneth Walker in that range instead. But ultimately, I just want to see him fully healthy, and I would like a better matchup than this. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will go Joe Mixon. Now, honestly, I'm going to move Mixon to the tier above because if you are looking at Joe Mixon here, this is a running back that should be in a top-end offense. It's a tough matchup going up against Buffalo, but you actually have Cincinnati as 2.5-point favorites here, and they have an applied team total of 25.5 points only behind the Chiefs this week. Looks like Burrow is fully healthy. I think we'd be very excited about that, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing that you're hesitant about is the matchup, like we said, going up against the Bills. Now, with Derrick Henry, at the time of this recording, is a Tennessee Titan. At the time of this recording, they are telling us that he will remain a Tennessee Titan at the same time. Now, last week, he had over 20 carries, and honestly, it's what we've seen over and over and over again, that if the Tennessee Titans are winning, then you are going to have Derrick Henry with a considerable amount of work, with a considerable amount of touches, and he'll be a great option in fantasy. However, on the other hand, if the Tennessee Titans fall behind, then it can get real ugly real quick. But the spread on this game is only 2.5 points. It is a Thursday night game, though, and the game overall is supposed to be a very low-scoring contest. Now, Raheem Mostert will be in the exact opposite of that, right? I mean, he's going to be playing in the highest-scoring game of the week. You have an over-under over 50 points in the Chiefs-Dolphins game currently. And with Mostert, my only hesitation is, if you look at the workload this past week, he did kind of fall back instead of being that running back getting the vast majority of the work here. It was more so a 3-man running back by committee. I mean, I still think you have to rank him as that low-end RB1, however, at least until we get Devon Achane back in. Once Achane comes back in, then at that point, maybe we can go through and reevaluate. Now, going down to our next tier, we'll be looking at Isaiah Pacheco in the same game. With Pacheco, I thought he was a must-start running back this past week against Denver. The matchup looked great, but surprise, surprise, the NFL is going to throw a curveball. You're going to get a game where a team's on a road in a division matchup, and they disappoint. That's exactly what happened here with the Chiefs. So Pacheco didn't do great, but he did still have the workload. He had pretty much every single touch out of this backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire still no longer being used. So I think we can go ahead and we can play him. Now, Rachaad White will be our next guy at 15. And yes, things get ugly real quick, and it's going to get even worse soon. Rachaad White, at least we know it's a good matchup going up against Houston. At least we know he's going to get every single touch out of his backfield. He's also going to get a ton of work as a receiver. So while I don't want to come out here and lie to you and say that he is the most exciting player ever, when it's very hard to find anybody that you feel comfortable starting, taking a year 2 running back, even if he has been very inefficient, I think we can go through and I think we can just jam him in. Now, our next guy will be Gus Edwards. With Gus Edwards going up against the Seattle Seahawks, coming off just phenomenal game after phenomenal game after phenomenal game. I do think we get a fallback for Edwards. This is a running back that ultimately is going to be splitting this backfield with Justice Hill. Justice Hill has still been the third down back, where Gus Edwards has been the first and second down running back in this offense. Right now, you have the Ravens as 6-point favorites, though. So, I mean, maybe they can go out there and just effectively run the ball in the second half. Now, going down to our next tier, we will go with Aaron Jones at 17. I don't know what we can do, ladies and gentlemen. A tough week here ranking running backs. With Aaron Jones, at least he saw 50% of the backfield this past week in terms of snaps. He's slowly but surely working himself back in. We will have to continue to monitor what we have with the practice reports, though. Then we will have Chuba Hubbard at 18. With Chuba Hubbard, he is the starting running back now for the Carolina Panthers. You actually have almost like a 45-point over-under here for this Colts-Panthers game. Should be one of the highest scoring games of the week. Plus, you have a running back that's going to get the majority of the work in his backfield and get involved as a receiver as well. I mean, in a week where you're not comfortable with anybody, looks like Chuba Hubbard's kind of that must-start option. Now, going down to our next tier, we will have Mario DeMercado. Still can't pronounce the name, but still don't think he's any good. Still think it's a bad matchup, but still probably have to play him because he's one of the very few running backs in the NFL right now that is getting that 20-touch workload. He had it yet again this past week where Keontae Ingram's out there. He's playing some snaps, but they're not giving Keontae Ingram the ball whatsoever. Everything just goes to DeMercado. He's going to get involved somewhat as a receiver. Now, it's a brutal matchup going up against Cleveland, but you'll notice that this is a long tier here where you can rank these guys in whatever order you want, ladies and gentlemen. None of these players are going to be exciting. Ramondre Stevenson, our next guy at 20. Can we be excited about Ramondre Stevenson? No. He has a matchup against Washington, horrendous defense. He's going to be involved as a receiver, but ultimately what we've seen all season now is Ramondre Stevenson is a running back that's been very inefficient in one of the worst offenses in the NFL and sharing the backfield as well. So he has a small piece of a small pie and he's not doing much with it. So it's not exciting. The only reason we're even going to have him this high, they're 3-point favorites over the Commanders. I mean, the Commanders have a horrible defense. We're going to have Brian Robinson here at 21. Brian Robinson, I mean, is a running back that's been kind of saving himself with touchdowns. Y'all know we've been having him as that sell-high candidate, just given the fact that ultimately at the end of the day, you kind of see the writing on the wall where if the Gibson usage is going up, Brian Robinson can't continue to just save himself over and over again with an occasional rushing touchdown. So I think we probably have to be pivoting. Then Darrell Henderson will be that next guy at 22. If you're looking at Darrell Henderson, this is an RB that I want to say, oh, okay, well, yeah, you can go through and you can feel comfortable starting him. Where the issue is, we don't know if Matthew Stafford's going to play. Now, good news with the Matthew Stafford injury, looks like he's day-to-day. Looks like he is not an IR candidate. But nonetheless, with Darrell Henderson here, this is going to be a running back that is splitting the backfield with Royce Freeman. You don't necessarily think Henderson's a great talent. We don't know if Stafford will play, so we don't know if the offense is going to be any good. And even if Stafford does play, we don't know if he's going to be 100%. Now, our next two guys will be Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt. With these running backs, then we have to rank both of them as top 24 options, just given the fact that it is a great matchup going up against the Cardinals. I mean, right now, you actually have the Cleveland Browns with an implied team total of 23.5 points. There's a 7.5 point spread on this game, so they should be able to run the ball in the second half and be effective while doing so. The ultimate issue that you have is, okay, well, we don't really know the health of Jerome Ford. He played last week, but clearly was not 100%. And you still have Pierre Strong getting work in this offense. So even if it's a great matchup, even if it's a great offensive line, I don't necessarily think Ford or Hunt are great talents, and they're in 3-man running back by committee. So I don't know. Alexander Mattison will be our next guy at 25. With Alexander Mattison, he'll be in one of the worst offenses in the NFL this week. You have an applied team total of 17 points. The only teams that are currently ahead of this are going to be the Titans and the Cardinals. Now, after the Monday night game, we get the implied team totals for the other teams. Maybe the Giants are behind. Maybe the Bears are behind. We don't know yet. Regardless, the Vikings look to be a damn near bottom 5 offense. They're going to be trailing the Falcons. The spread on this game is 4 points. I doubt they're going to be able to run the ball consistently. Cam Akers is getting work inside the red zone. So I'm actually going to be dropping Alexander Mattison behind James Cook here just because I don't know what else to do. I mean, with James Cook, this is a running back that's been horrible. Everybody's been panicking where he has been worth pennies on the dollar over the past few weeks. It's been impossible to sell James Cook, which is why we said, hell, maybe if you wanted to go send an offer, see if we can get him as a throw-in, let's do it. But yeah, now that we have Leonard Fournette coming in, I mean, I don't necessarily think Fournette comes in and is immediately the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills by any means. I don't think Fournette's good at this point of his NFL career. But nonetheless, it shows us what they think about James Cook. James Cook wasn't productive in the first place, so I doubt we can say he's productive now. Then going down to our next tier, we'll go Dameon Pierce at 27. With Dameon Pierce, you don't love the matchup going up against Tampa. And at the same time, you're in a 3-man running back by committee with Devin Singletary, Mike Boone. He's like a worse version of, I want to say, Ramondre Stevenson at this point, right? Or at least Stevenson is an inefficient running back in a 2-man committee, where Dameon Pierce is that inefficient running back in that three-man committee. Now, Deonta Foreman will be our next back going up against the Saints. If you are looking at Foreman, we said it last week, you can't start him. He's in a committee and in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And then followed up, we will go Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, 29 and 30. You can't start either of these players. You have an implied team total of 19 points for this Tennessee Titans game. I mean, right now, you actually have the Steelers favored by 2.5 points, but should be a super low scoring contest. We don't know what the quarterback situation will be. It's not a good matchup going up against a tough Titans rush defense. We're also Najee and Warren. They haven't been giving you anything all season now. But I think that should be that. If you have not done so already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me remind you, go out there and check out those free community rankings that we have for everybody on flockfantasy.com. I mean, you can contribute to those rankings yourself. I think that's going to be able to really help you going forward in determining values of your fantasy team and making trades the whole 9 yards. And of course, if you wanted to check out my rankings over there, any of our premium content, you can always sign up with code FLOCK. You're going to get 30% off any subscription, plus promo code FLOCK and the Mother Flocker package. Yours truly will break down your team in a fantasy football podcast. And any annual package is going to get you that Flock hat. So please make sure you take advantage. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.